obliterating confusion, amplifying truth, and pursuing clarity. It's Kevin McCullough Radio.
As we roll on this Tuesday, there's a lot to get to, but I have to stop for a second and draw your attention to something that State Senators Jessica Ramos, Julia Salazar, and Brad Hoylman, along with Assemblyman Richard Gottfried, are all trying to push. They announced last week that they're trying to craft a bill to fully decriminalize sex work in New York State. I don't know to what degree that fully goes, because there's a lot of things that people call sex work. But this is concerning on many levels, not the least of which the impact it will eventually have on small children. Someone who disagrees with this plan has written an op-ed in today's New York Post. Laila Mickelwait is her name, and she joins us. She is the Director of Abolition. I love that title, of a group called Exodus Cry. Laila, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming on Kevin McCullough Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why do you oppose this?
Well, for one, what they're proposing is a trafficker's dream come true, because what they're really advocating for is the full decriminalization of prostitution. And what that means, don't be deceived, public. What that means is that they want to legalize and completely legitimize pimping, brothel keeping, and sex buying. And this has been proven over and over in any country that has tried this to be an absolute disaster for women and children who are mostly pulled into the sex industry by vulnerabilities beyond their control. So researchers at the London School of Economics did a quantitative empirical analysis of 150 different countries, and they found that on average, countries that adopted laws such as full decriminalization or legalization had an increase in human trafficking, and countries that did the opposite, where they came down hard on pimps, traffickers, and sex buyers, naturally had the opposite reaction in their country, where they saw a decrease in trafficking. So the first thing that people need to know about this law is that it doesn't protect women and children. It doesn't protect those in the sex industry. It protects pimps. It protects traffickers, and it protects those who would seek to profit off of the exploitation of women and children. And so that's the number one thing that people need to realize about this quote-unquote full decriminalization that I think is quite sinister.
You include a lot of information in your piece today, but you talk about why it's not good for women, even for women that are in it. You mentioned a mortality study that studied nearly 2,000 female prostitutes. What happened to them?
Right. Well, first of all, anywhere that prostitution has been studied, anywhere around the world, whether that's in legal prostitution or fully decriminalized prostitution, or in countries where it's been prohibited, where it's illegal to buy or sell sex, you find the same statistics. You find the same rates of rape, of violence, of PTSD. So there was a study of nearly 1,000 women in prostitution in 9 countries. Some of those countries were where it's legal, and some of them were where it's illegal. And they found that 68% of the women in prostitution suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder at the same level as treatment-seeking combat veterans and victims of state-organized torture. They found that 71% of them had been physically assaulted, 63% of them had been raped, and 89% of them wanted to escape prostitution, but they just didn't know how. So there was also that mortality study that you're referencing of nearly 2,000 women in prostitution, and they found that murder accounted for 50% of the deaths of women in prostitution. The researchers said that they had never studied any population that had come close to the rate of murder as women in prostitution. Women in prostitution have a mortality rate that is 200 times greater than the general population. So whether it's legal or whether it's illegal, prostitution is an inherently harmful and abusive system for those who get in it, and it needs to be abolished. It doesn't need to be legitimized. It doesn't need to be promoted as a normal form of work for women. It needs to be, clearly it needs to be, it's not something that should exist in a world where we espouse to want to protect equality and the dignity of women and children.
Let's talk about solutions. How can common New Yorkers stop this?
Well, first of all, they need to become aware and not buy into the lie of the pimp lobby that tries to promote this as a good thing for those who are in prostitution and hide the fact that full decriminalization really means that you're going to legalize brothels, pimps, and sex buyers. So that's number one. You need to be aware of that. And the next thing is that you need to offer an alternative. So yes, we don't need to be putting women who are caught up in this brutal system of prostitution behind bars. They need to be offered social services and exit services and ways that they can be helped to escape prostitution.
Real quickly, Laila, where are the women's groups on this? Where's now? Where's Planned Parenthood?
Oh, well, I haven't heard any statement come out of Planned Parenthood, but those who truly understand the issue of prostitution and the fact that it is a brutal system of violence against women.
Right.
It is not, and it's a system of gender inequality as well, because across the world, you see that 98% of those who are being sold for sex are women. 99% of those who are buying those women are men. That means that prostitution is not a job. It's not sex work. What it is, it's a form of gender inequality, and it's a form of violence against women. Yeah. And women's groups and women's rights organizations that see it in that way, which is the truth, they are the ones that are legislating against the industry, trying to abolish prostitution and help women get out of this system of gender inequality and violence. And that's why countries are adopting a new approach. Israel just adopted this model of legislation. It's called the abolition model. And what it does is it protects women in prostitution by offering them social services and means of escape. But it puts the onus of responsibility squarely on the shoulders of those who seek to exploit them. And that's the pimps, the brothel keepers, and the johns.
Laila, we're out of time, but I've got to have you come back at some point because I want to know more about Exodus Cry. But excellent work today in the Post. Thank you for raising awareness about it. And we will be on this like white on rice going forward. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Kevin McCullough Radio. When we come back, a look at technology. Don't go away.